Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Circuit 42. I am Ian, professional wizard at large. This is Michael Martinez. He is not a wizard, but he is ninja, and he has many, many swords and ferrets. That's why he's got that man bun.
I could be, a wizard ninja or a ninja wizard. That's a thing, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's an option. That's got to be an option somewhere like in Baldur's Gate or something.
Yeah, I'd say so. Now, someone has broken into the studio. It's happened again because we don't bother to lock the doors or have doors or have a studio. But either way, it works out. So speaking of people just breaking into our studio, Mr. Joe Eisma, comic book artist.
Hello.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you.
And Evangelion fan.
Yes. Evangelion and just anime nerd in general too. So yeah,
Yes, you're among
yeah.
good fellow people. So for those five people who don't know, those people who haven't read Morning Glories, those people who haven't read Riverdale, those people who aren't reading Student Bodies, those sociopaths out there. Because remember, insult your audience. That's how you get them to keep coming back. Just badmouth the shit out of them.
Okay.
Um, that's what I think. Um, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It explains a lot. But for those five people out there who don't know who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm a comic book artist, and I've been in comics for 16, going on 17 years now. I've drawn a lot of different properties. Morning Glories was my first big hit with Nick Spencer at Image Comics. Since then, I've worked on the Archie franchise and different versions of Archie, from Riverdale to Jughead the Hunger and more traditional Archie, and worked with Valiant on a lot of their properties. And yeah, just kind of a journeyman kind of guy in comics, and do a lot. My career is mostly like a lot of creator-owned books as well. So.
So how just now this is a question that no one has ever asked in any interview. How did you get started in the comic books?
Well, I was working because I'm in the Dallas area, and I was working for a local independent video game developer, and we weren't doing any interesting games. It was iPhone and Nintendo DS games, and they're pretty bad because the guy who ran the company, he was kind of an old school guy, and he wanted to do very specific kind of stuff like Zamboni simulator kind of stuff, and so it wasn't really creatively fulfilling. So I started doing comics on the side, and eventually it just kind of overtook my job because I had more creative freedom and I enjoyed it more. So that was around, I started doing that probably around 2006, and my first book came out in 2008.
I've always liked your style. It's almost this balance of it's realism without dipping into what I hate, which is just photorealism.
Well, thank you.
Because that's the moment where it starts to look like you start to get that kind of uncanny valley feel into your artwork.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
we're not talking about anyone in particular
Yeah,
because we don't do that here at Circuit 42.
it's very kind of you.
I mean, we
Yeah.
leave people like Bragg Bland alone. Um,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I agree with you. It's that kind of uncanny valley thing. I don't like straight up photo traced stuff. I do use photo reference, but I take my own photo reference, and it's reference. It's not like photocopying it, tracing it, live trace, or whatever you want to, Photoshop filter over it to make it look like line art. I think that's almost like AI art at this point. It's like there's no effort in that. But yeah, I've always, I grew up. I see all the X-Men stuff in your in your room there, and it's like
what?
the Jim Lee era and Joe Mad stuff. That was my stuff, and initially that's what the kind of style I wanted to do, but quickly realized, that I can't do what they do. But I do like a lot. I do like detailed stuff. Like good friend of mine is Nick Patera, and Nick does really intricate,
Yeah.
highly detailed stuff. Also, a kind of style I don't really do, but I admire it. But I also admire stuff like manga and that kind of really over exaggerated, big on gesture kind of stuff. So I like to try to blend kind of those two schools of thought.
I think for me, the thing I one of my to give you an idea of my personal taste, my favorite comic book artist is pretty much since around college to now has pretty much always been Paul Smith.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And you can
Yeah.
see what drew me to your work because it's
Oh,
like
yeah. Well, thank you.
it has that vibe of, and yours does have that as well, where it's less of traditional comic style and more of like an either not, I wouldn't say a comic style that mimics animation, but almost like a blending of animation style and comic art.
Well, thank you, Ian. That's such a huge compliment because I love animation and like I grew up on like Don Bluth animation and the of course there was Disney back then, but I loved anime from a very early age and yeah that especially Paul Smith. Like I remember when I was a kid, I got to his X-Men run and I didn't get it at the time, and I actually didn't become a fan of his until Leave It to Chance.
I
And
love Leave
at
It to
that
Chance.
point, yeah, I had to like go back and just redevour like all of his comics. And yes, Paul Smith, like if I go back and reread my X-Men omnibuses, omnibi, whatever, like that's the stuff I look forward to the most is getting to his issues.
I I look at it this way. It's like we finally got what I've been wanting forever, a proper complete collection of Talos.
Hmm.
The
Ringo,
by Ringo. I feel bad because I totally it's Todd, is it Todd DeZuga?
Todd DeZago, yeah,
Todd DeZago
yeah.
and Michael Ringo. And Michael's looking this up right now to be like, what is this?
I
Um,
am.
and it's seriously like one of the most underrated comics of the late 90s, early 2000s. We
Hmm.
finally got a proper collection of that. And I'm like, can we please? Because people don't realize that they've never actually collected all of Leave It to Chance. I'm like, can
Yeah,
we please get like, even if it's like a thick boy trade,
yeah.
can we please get like a complete collection or an omnibus or something?
Oh my
Because
God.
that
Yeah, that
comic book,
Telos Colossal, that book, I have that
oh
in
yeah,
my
I need
office
that.
somewhere. I would love a Leave It to Chance in that same format. That would be so beautiful.
The only thing I dislike about Leave It to Chance is that even though I'm a huge Wildstorm fan, it's I can't loan that book to like our friends who have kids. So I'm like, nah, this is a perfect thing for like tween to teenage girl to get into comic books
Hmm.
because which is you can't say that very often about most comics. But
Yeah.
then the entire back of the comic book is covered in Wildstorm cheesecake art.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I can't because this is just completely like
I know.
not appropriate because of the other books that are being advertised at the time.
Right, right, exactly. And that
I
like
probably need
that's
a complete collection of that.
yeah, and that's what's so hard too about like, it's so funny that you mentioned that because like there's a huge contingent of comic fans that love that cheesecake stuff and obviously because it was a huge thing in the 90s and even to this day with you look at all the variant covers and stuff. And so I added some like cheesecake stuff to my prints that I bring to shows and I always feel bad like if a kid comes by and I'm like, "No, please don't flip through that section."
Yeah, because I'm gonna be straight up about it. I'm a fan of like J. Scott Campbell.
Yeah.
Um, I've got Vampirella on the other side of this office,
Hmm.
but I'm like at the same time, if you're a company and you're promoting a certain title,
Right.
it's like you're kind of sending mixed messages when you're like, here's
Agreed.
the thing for a perfect target audience, but we're gonna throw this in as something
Yeah.
that completely puts off the target audience.
Right. So
And
that's
I'm
why they
like,
need to do a revised collection and just have it just be that stuff.
yeah.
I mean, just the
Yeah.
leave it a chance. Yeah.
Although I'm not gonna lie, I love going through some of my old comics, looking at the ads and such on there, because I'm like, God, it really what's the term I'm
We
looking
know,
for?
Ian. We know what kind of deviant you are.
Uh, not all the time, but
Like,
it's a time capsule. You know, when you go
Yeah.
through some of the old comics,
Oh
that's
yeah.
what the one thing I do. Even though I appreciate the convenience of it trades, the annoyance that I do also appreciate the nostalgia of being able to flip through a book and being like, why were there so many Stridex ads? Oh wait, because comic readers are nerds.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's what I love about like the my 80s back issues. There'd be like Bonkers, the candy ads and stuff like that. And those Hostess, those little mini comics with like that they did with the Hostess cakes or whatever that were like so ridiculous and so cheesy. I love those. I wish they could put out a book of just the ads from those old comics. I know they can't, but that would be great.
Before we get back into the actual subject of the interview, the my favorite ad like that is still the one for the Splatterhouse games.
Oh yeah.
because it was literally a two-page mini comic book story that they used to promote. Like it was fully written, fully illustrated,
Yeah.
two-page comic book in the middle of ads that
I
set up the
know.
game.
I
And I'm
remember
like,
that.
that's freaking cool. And
Yeah.
I wish I kept all my military-based comics, being a military brat, because
Mhm.
apparently there's a huge market for those where they have like the ads for like the military ratings and stuff
Really?
that are in the comics. Dude, there's comic stores that sell those for like $100 for
Oh
like a comic
man.
that's not even a special comic. And I'm like, God, I wish I kept those because like each one of those is probably a good chunk of money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's literally just ads targeted towards military people to sell them crappy ratings while
Oh
they're
my
trying to
God.
live on a lieutenant salary.
Wow.
Not that I've grown up around that at all. It's like, give us money. I'm a lieutenant. No, give it to us. It's like, all right.
I will say, like on the subject of that, what we're talking about is quote unquote like the cheesecake type stuff. Sometimes that leads you to I want to say like styles that will still stick with you for a while. Like I remember, obviously there are certain reasons why, growing up you might be drawn to something like Witchblade, Aspen comics, stuff like that. But like I really started to gravitate toward like Michael Turner's art and the way that he completely nailed down some of like the aquatic life and the reefs and just the way that he draws water. Like anytime I do any like dabbling of like water, I always kind of model it after him
What do
just
you
because
know?
I
I mean,
enjoyed
you
it
know
so
why?
much. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, because it's literally that was basically his entire. It was
yeah.
literally that in comics. Like one of my friends was actually worked at SeaWorld for a while, and and there's a part in one of the Fathom comics where this guy is supposed to be feeding a dolphin, and this
Mhm.
giant sea monster comes up and eats him. And not
Yeah.
only did he look like our friend who used to do that for a job, but he had the same name too.
Wow.
And we showed this to him, and he was like, "This is the funniest, weirdest damn thing ever." Because literally it was his job at SeaWorld, and he saw this, and he's like, "What the fuck? Why does he have my name?"
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
So, oh, sorry,
speaking of
Ryan.
which, I was doing a little bit of research because like we're super professional here. We do that sort of thing. I did see something about you being drawn into Chew.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was? Okay. Well, so when Morning Glories came out, like we came out like I think we debuted the year after Chew came out. And I love Chew. Chew was like that was my jam. I actually, back in the day before social media, they had the Image Comics message board. And Rob, Guillory, and John, I don't know if John was there. I think Rob was, but they would sometimes lurk and stuff. And I would post like some fan art and I would just nerd out about them. And so, I eventually got to know them. And, again, mentioning Nick Patera, we all started to kind of hang out, especially because Nick lives in Houston. I'm in the Dallas area, and Rob, is in Louisiana. So we did a lot of shows together in the South. So we would all hang out and stuff. And we ended up just putting each other in each other's comics. I think I put Rob in one issue. I'm sure I remember Rob telling me about I was in Chew. I think I remember the actual little drawing that he had of me in there. And Nick put us all in Manhattan Projects. I put Nick and a bunch of other artists in Morning Glories, and like they were security guards that were like blown up and dismembered and stuff. And because that's the fun thing you do to your friends. But yeah, yeah, I think it's coming back to me. It's been so long, but yeah. That was fun. That I kind of miss that kind of camaraderie because we've all kind of, we've got families now. We've all kind of gone in different places in our careers, and so we don't stay in touch as closely as we used to. But that kind of stuff, I love putting my friends and stuff in books, and I'm still doing that to this day. There's one friend of mine who's in one of my upcoming series that hasn't been announced yet. I actually probably should tell her she's in the book. So,
Yeah, I'll get sued.
nah, no, she wouldn't. She would laugh.
And then, I'm sorry, I just thought Todd McFarlane and Al Simmons, where it's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh
You
shit.
know, I a long time ago, back when Spawn came out, I got because Todd and Merritt Michaels were doing the signing somewhere in the Dallas area. I want to say it was like in Fort Worth, and my mom took me and a friend of mine, and not only were Todd and Merritt there, but Al Simmons was there. So I got Al Simmons to sign my Spawn, and he like autographed it, the real Spawn or something like that. It was so great. It's one of my treasured books.
That is so cool though.
Yeah,
But it also is like make sure if you name your friend after a comic character after your friend, then you make
yeah,
sure to maintain that friendship.
right.
So it can
Yeah,
go really, really badly. Anyone
yeah,
who wants to know more, look up Todd McFarlane Al Simmons controversy.
yeah.
You'll find it. Um, but yeah, dude, you need to come to San Antonio, man. They started doing a show called Casa these last couple of years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been talking to
and
someone from the
Rob
show.
was there. I was
Yeah.
actually there, and dude, Christopher Priest was there, and I was like, holy shit.
Oh, nice. I've always wanted to meet. I was actually I think I was at Denver Comic Con years ago, and at the same time as Christopher Priest, and I was way too nervous to go meet him. He was in the artist alley. I think he was just right around where I was tabled. And like I still get that way sometimes, like with comic creators that whose work I admire, I get too nervous to go introduce myself to them, and I'm like, one of these days I'm going to do it.
Dude, he and I started talking, and like I've been doing this for how long now? This is what 2011, and
Mm.
so I I had that moment where I'm like, I have to play this cool. So I started talking to him, and we just started shooting the shit, and he says, "Hey, do you want here? Pull over a chair so we can sit down, so we can talk some more." And I'm like,
Oh,
uh, and I'm just like for a second, I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." In my mind, I'm like, "Holy shit, I'm losing my fucking mind."
that's so awesome. Yeah, I mean, like they say, like don't meet your heroes, but like outside of like maybe one or two people in comics, like everybody I've met that whose work that I've met, or even like people that I've come up with, or whatever, like they've been great, and like creators are so nice and so welcoming, and that's what I try to be like. Like I try not to be like dismissive, and if anybody comes up to my table and they want to chat about stuff, I'm like that. It's so nice because this job is so kind of isolated. Like I'm toiling away here in my office like for hours on end, and my wife is like always trying to find ways to get me to get out of the house. And so like Comic Cons are great because like, oh, there's actual people that sometimes read my work.
I personally found like I don't know about you guys, but I found that most of the negative experience I had was when I was much younger. And I'm like, was it a negative experience or was I just a socially awkward like man
Mm,
child? And
yeah,
um and I tend to lean into socially awkward man child. Weirdly enough, one of the best interactions I've had was with John Byrne. And I hear
really.
so much about John Byrne, but the man was like, and it was at I don't know if you were at Fan Expo that year. I don't think you were, but he was basically doing 10 signatures per person. And it was like, hey, as long as you're not CGC in it, you're good.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, and he was doing 10 free signatures a person. And I'm like, I feel like this was his wrap up tour
Huh.
because it was like the opposite of things that I've heard about him before. And I brought him like a reprint collection, and he did not have the stamp. So
Yeah, I was
I'm
like,
like,
did
did
he
you
say
just
the
chill?
reprints?
Oh, I actually no, I actually asked because I actually asked about this. I wanted to ask about the stamp, but I chose not to because I kind of wanted John Byrne stamp. Michael, do you
Yeah.
understand the relevance of the John Byrne stamp?
I have not heard of the John Byrne stamp. Explain it for
You gotta tell the
everybody.
story.
Okay, so basically, John Byrne, one of the other things he used to do, and this is part of the reason he also, I think this is one of many reasons he actually got banned from a lot of conventions. I think back when the Baltimore Comic Con was like the big shit. I know they still are, but when you have like C2E2 and all these other shows, you're getting that tighter competition. But he used to do his whole logic was, oh, you brought me a reprint. Okay, so I've got a reprint autograph stamp. And so if you brought John Byrne a reprint, he would take a stamp of his autograph and he would stamp the comic book.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
like a lot of people got mad, but then there got to a point where people were like, "Oh my God, I got a John Byrne stamp," and people were actually excited about it. And I was hoping that he kept the John Byrne stamp around, but I'm like, God damn it, he got some chill. And then I read about all the stuff that he says online. I'm like, oh, you don't have chill. You're just being socially acceptable.
Yeah, I've had experience with comic creators that kind of like both ways. I'm not going to name names, but I've had some pretty negative ones, but also some pretty positive ones. And I think at the end of the day, you just got to remember they're just people. And I kind of try to approach it the way that you were talking about, Joe. Just kind of say like, okay, they probably, work by themselves a lot. This is like a good opportunity for them to interact with their fans. So
Hmm.
whenever I get a chance, I think the last time I got like a little bit nervous, but then worked up some courage to say something was to like Ryan Audley when he
Mm.
was
Oh, he's so nice though. Yeah.
yeah, he was great.
Like,
I
what
think
do you do to Ryan?
no. Not I didn't say anything bad happened, but no, I just had to like kind of like work the courage up because I think was this was like when he had finished up with Invincible and he was about to start working on Spider-Man, and I was like
Hmm.
I'm kind of like really excited to see what he does on that title. So I just had to go up to him and say looking forward to what you're about to do on Spider-Man, and just loved your work, and just try to play it cool, I guess.
That's awesome.
So, Joe, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
So one of the big things I've always loved since I was a kid was Archie, and I
Hmm.
used to, and just for fun because the HEB, and for those who don't know, HEB is a significantly large Texas grocery store chain. Joe knows about this,
Yes, yes. It's like
and
sacred in Texas.
yeah, and one of the things I've always liked about them is that they carry Archie collections,
Hmm.
and nobody else really does that.
Yeah.
So and because of people like you, because of people like Dan Parent and Francisco Ruiz, I've been finding out about all these Archie books are coming up. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What the heck? Okay. And so
Yeah.
like I honestly think that you guys are like the best market. They should be paid like a marketing bonus sometimes for the Archie books.
Yeah.
Because
I should write them about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So we did. Like
Yeah. I
give
mean,
money. The man said so. Like this guy
yeah.
is like this guy we haven't ever heard of. Yeah, him. All
You
right,
know,
sure. Here's a bunch of money. Sweet.
I
Pretty sure
love
that'll happen.
I love when people show me like that they bought my book, like that they, when they get it at the shop or whatever. But when I started on Archie, there was a girl who'd been a fan of mine for a while. She was a Morning Glories fan, and she was very excited that I was doing Archie. And she found my book in a grocery store, and she took a picture of it in her basket with her groceries. And I was like so excited. I was like, "Oh my God, now I made it. I'm in the grocery store."
And it makes me wonder, like with that, but I want to know about that because you talk about that. And I'm like, and that's one of the things. Like you look at the people who are working in Archie comics. Like you look at people like you look at people like Dan, Francesco,
Mhm.
Holly Golightly,
Hmm.
and it's like the more and more just crazy talent that's just popped up in Archie over the last couple of years. And it's always been a thing, but it's like in the last couple of years, you're really seeing a lot of these people who are leaving their footprint in it.
Hmm.
Um, what was that? What was that experience like? How do you get into the Archie titles, Riverdale, etc.?
Oh, it was fantastic. I love the Archie franchise and everybody involved with it. They're so great. When they relaunched the main series a few years ago with Mark Waid and Fiona Staples, like I remember, I was like in the running to be the next up artist or the one following Fiona, and I did some tryouts and made it all the way to the CEO, and they said nah. And then I think it was Veronica Fish was the next artist. Anyway, then they did another round, and uh, and I think it was between me and one other guy. I won't name who it is, and I got it, and like I was so happy, and yeah, they were just so great. They loved what I did. I loved working for them. Everybody there was phenomenal. No drama queens and anybody that I collaborated with there. Um, Very supportive. There was one time I had just been completely. I was doing because I ended up doing multiple stuff for them. Like I was doing the Archies and Riverdale, or Jughead the Hunger and Riverdale, and not just one at a time. But I think there was one time I got kind of overwhelmed with that, and I think might have been doing stuff at Valiant too. I was like, I have to step away from something for a month, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. And like, so I didn't do an issue of Riverdale or something, and they brought in a fill-in artist, and I was like, it's that easy, but Yeah, they're just so nice. They're so great to work with and like so supportive. Everybody there, Mike Colorito, I talk with all the time. I mean, he's like to me, he's Mr. Archie. He's like been there for the longest. He like the caretaker of the franchise. He focuses more on the classic line. Um, Jamie Rotante does like a lot of the more modern stuff, and she's fantastic. Yeah, just great. Everybody there is fantastic, and I love that property. I wish that they would. I wish we could do more. Like Frank, Terry, and I talk all the time. Like we'd love to do more Jughead the Hunger, but it's just a matter of convincing them.
Because like yeah, because I remember that was that one moment. There was that moment in time where they were doing like these all these awesome horror books. Like you were doing the
Yeah,
Blossom 666. You were doing um
the
uh,
Afterlife with Archie and
yeah. And
all that
although
stuff.
really, it's I think Afterlife at Archer is one of those things. Just like with Sabrina, it's like we're going to
Yeah,
bring in these really elaborate artists who are constantly being commissioned for print work, and it's
yeah,
like oh, that's going to take a while to come out. And unfortunately, it seemed like the sad thing is there were so many people I had to tell, no, there are these other really awesome like horror
yeah.
comic books out of Archie and all these really bizarre titles out of Archie comics because Archie was like the last company that dropped the parental rating, whatever the hell.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And and the moment they did that was it was like a it was
Before the
like
gates open.
turning off a light.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, like people were like, I can't believe they have all these weird crossovers. I'm like, I do not remember if Archie meets the Punisher, but I do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was then Archie meets the Predator. I think they did that
Yeah,
one. That was
and
pretty.
that was Alex DeCampi, and so you knew it was going to be warped and really funny.
Oh yeah, true.
But Michael, have you read any of these comics that we're talking about?
I was not big into Archie. I remember like making a mental note to like check it out when Wade was doing some work on it, but that just didn't happen.
Track down Archie versus Predator. Um,
I'm definitely going to. And
they're
you
going to
can
be
see, especially because they have Fox now. They've got like the Aliens and they got the Predator properties. They've been doing all these crossovers.
hmm
Maybe there'll be some kind of revival for that.
hopefully, but normally it seems like when one of the big two grabs onto a license, sadly we don't see those crossovers much, except for DC. Weirdly enough, DC puts like we see like Green Lantern and Star Trek and all this other
Yeah,
stuff, and I'm like, Marvel, come on, guys. Hopefully, the Marvel DC thing finally opened that back up.
yeah.
Hopefully, I'm not sure. See, that was the great thing about audio. You didn't see the doubt in my face when I said these things. So it's like, oh, he seemed objective, and it's like, no, not really. But yeah, they're a little tougher to come by now. But I mean, the fact that there's a moment in Archie vs. Predator where not only do all the supporting characters from the first Predator movie have a cameo, but also you have a moment where Pop gets his head blown off by by a Predator laser blast, and it's not clean. It's a lot of blood, and it's all drawn by Francisco Ruiz, so it looks like a classic Archie comic where Pop has gotten his head blown off by a
Yeah,
freaking Predator beam.
yeah,
Okay, I gotta check it out. I gotta track it down somehow.
So I'm just gonna try to find this so people don't think we're lying because I think a lot of times people think I'm full of shit, including my co-hosts.
Okay,
Joe knows I'm not full of shit.
while Ian's tracking that down, Joe, you were saying before, like you get really excited when somebody kind of shows you that they picked up one of your books.
yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious, like what like book or what work would you say like you're most proud of?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I guess I would have to say Morning Glories would be like the most significant one in my life. Just because it was kind of like the catalyst for like my entire career. It was literally the fourth thing I had drawn professionally. I had drawn uh three in really small press books with the same writer. We had just worked at different publishers and uh I had just posted my art on again on a message board and connected with Nick who liked my art and just we just happened to connect and I remember when I'll never forget when I read that first Morning Glory script and I was like it was one of those it's kind of like lightning in a bottle kind of feelings. And there's been a few projects, very few projects. I'm not to downplay any of my other properties, but oh my gosh, that's so crazy. But yeah, like there's sometimes there's like that a writer will send me a script for a first issue, and it's like I get that same, hair stands up on the back of my neck kind of feeling. And yeah, so like Nick and I, we just managed to click immediately, and uh, that book, I knew it was gonna be something special. I didn't think it would be as big as it was at the beginning, and we went to 4 printings on our first issue, which was insane at the time. And like the next few issues, I think we went the next 3 or 4, maybe 5 issues went to multiple printings too. We didn't see any money off of that for like 2 or 3 years, but yeah, like everything I have, like I owe to that series. So that one will always hold a special place in my heart. But and I know Ian understands this because he's on my social media, like how often I get asked about it because we ended on a cliffhanger to go in hiatus. And it's coming up on 10 years now. And I'm like, I don't want to tell people not to have hope, but Nick is he's kind of doing his own thing now, and I don't know if it'll ever come back, but yeah, that would probably be the one that's probably like the nearest and dearest to my heart. But there's so many that I've worked on that just have meant so much to me. Engine Ward from Vault was another one that kind of flew under the radar because it came out right in the middle of COVID lockdown, which we had like planned this huge launch for San Diego Comic-Con 2020, and I was going to go overseas and do some shows over there, and of course none of that happened. But that's another one that's like really a lot of like my voice. Not that any of the other ones aren't, but I mean, when you're working on stuff like Archie or Valiant Properties, or I did some on the Flash. I mean, those are other people's characters, and like Morning Glories and Engine Ward and the stuff I'm doing now is like, it's all creator owned, and so it's more, personal.
Yeah. And, as I was like looking into like some of your work and some of your background,
Hmm.
I did see that bit about how you were involved in, video games and
Hmm.
doing some animated work.
Yeah.
And, it really made me curious, like what it was that kind of like drew you to comic books instead. And from
Hmm.
just from talking to you, it seems like it's really the fact that you're getting to put like your own spin on it and
Yeah. Yeah.
get to, basically put yourself into it rather than, working on somebody else's stuff.
Right, right. And I mean, it's not that I don't like that. I mean, I've worked, I mean, anytime you get a chance to work on a property that you loved or whatever, or that you do like, I mean, it's so exhilarating. I got to do a bunch of Star Trek stuff over the last couple of years, and that was fun. It's really difficult because Star Trek fans and Paramount are very particular about likenesses. So having to get likenesses right for all those characters is pretty nerve-wracking, but you're working on Star Trek. That's great. And but yeah, like having the chance to be a little bit more I guess have more of a voice has always been really important to me as an artistic individual. I started off as a kid reading comics and wanting to do comics, and then I drifted out of it, and then went to college, and then ended up in grad school and wanted to do video games, and then I did that, and it was like the best analogy I can think of for like why I drifted out of video games, besides not being creatively fulfilled, was like once you see how the sausage is made, you don't want to partake anymore. And I couldn't even look at video games the same way for a long time. I couldn't enjoy them, but I've kind of gotten back into them now as a fan, and comics is my job, and like I'm video games is like my hobby. So yeah,
So what are you playing right now?
a lot of Balatro. Um, I just discovered that one, and that's been unfortunately eating up a lot of my time. But I also have been playing the Like a Dragon series, the Yakuza series.
Hmm.
I never really played those before, but I saw some people talking about them. Like, I'll give this a shot, and it's like absolutely like perfect for me in terms of like the way it's presented and the storytelling, because it's also it's like Ian said, it's like it's kind of got this realism aspect to it, that I like in my art, but it's also very bizarre in moments and like it's very humorous. And I love to interject that stuff into my art as well. So it's like this is totally my wheelhouse.
Well,
So though that I'm playing that one and Balatro pretty much right now, and I love like I'm a big JRPG fan, huge Final Fantasy nerd, and if anyone follows my socials, like that's pretty much all I talked about all of last year, or the last 2 years were Final Fantasy. But yeah, I don't know. That's that's the thing that because like doing when you make your hobby, because drawing was my hobby, and you make that your job, it's still fun and it's still enjoyable, but it's a job and you don't look at it the same anymore. It's kind of what happened to me with working in video games. But um, yeah, so you need some. I feel like you're always going to need like an outlet, a way to unwind, and that's kind of the way gaming is for me now. And maybe I'll end up back in. I still have friends in the game industry that are doing work, and I love seeing like all the new independent games that come out. I wouldn't be opposed to doing some work, in that capacity, but I wouldn't go work for like a major studio or anything.
I just need to sit down and start playing games again. It's been a while because just everything happens.
Yeah.
I know the last thing I played was the Spider-Man Miles Morales game they made.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And it was really good, but it's been a minute. And
Mhm.
eventually I'll get a PlayStation 5, but I'm like, there's so much more important things right now, unfortunately.
Right.
Real
Yeah,
life sucks sometimes, kids.
that's true.
yeah,
But
it really does. I've been playing a couple different things. Like I got Helldivers 2.
Oh, nice.
I've been trying to like run through like some of like my PlayStation Plus games, like
Mhm.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Been also playing Rise of the Ronin. Been liking that a lot.
Oh yeah.
What else? Just got a Elden Ring. Just pop into Elden Ring like every now and then for like
Yeah.
some jolly cooperation.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, my kids, I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they both like one right after the other played Ghost of Tsushima pretty recently, and like they just fell hard for that game. They were like they loved it. And then my youngest just finished the new Assassin's Creed Shadows, and he loves that one. And so like I kind of I have those games, but I haven't got around to playing them yet because my library is just full of games I haven't gotten to yet. Because I do like to play games, but I also
Mhm.
have to work. So like I try like to resist the temptation of just dropping everything and playing video games all day. There's stuff like yeah, I mean I've dipped my toe a little bit into the Elden Ring, not too much. And Rise of the Ronin is one it's in my library. I just, got to get around to it one of these days.
yeah,
Yeah, I would highly recommend that one if they're really into like Ghost to Tsushima
Yeah.
or like the new Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
It's not as pretty as
Mhm.
Ghost, but the mechanics are still like very solid and it's crazy big. There's a lot to do in there.
Nice.
yeah, when you mentioned Helldivers, I'm like, I need to play that game because one of my favorite movies of all time is still Starship Troopers, despite how goofy it
Yeah.
is.
Oh yeah.
And my and my neighbor, funny enough, from across the street works for the same company I do. And she was talking about, yeah, I've been playing Helldivers all the time. I still play it all the time. And I'm like, you described this game, and I'm like, I need to actually play this game and own it. And I'm like, there's a Starship Troopers, unofficial Starship Troopers game out there, and I have not played it. What the hell is wrong with me? So, gotta ask, man, student government.
Yes.
I saw your announcement on your Facebook page, and I'm like, holy crap, ask Joe Eisma. Tell us
Yes.
about it. What's going on here?
Well, this is the book. It is out now from Maverick Graphic Novels slash Mad Cave Studios. It is. I'm so proud of this book. It's my first young adult graphic novel book. Like most of my stuff, especially Morning Glories, has been like kind of mature readers, or just whatever. Like my kids really were never gonna read my work, but like now my oldest. Like he's 16, he's like right in the target audience of this. It's like 15, 16 and above is the target audience for this book. And it's about the interim student government at this New England kind of university. They're the losers. So because they're the interim between the winter and the spring. They don't, they don't have anything to do, so they're there for the holidays. Anyway, they find out that there's like their campus is built over these huge pockets of gold, and so the Board of Regents want to tear the campus down, and mine all the gold, and like so they have to like, it's kind of like that. If you think of like 80s style movies, like where they got to save the school or save the ski lodge or whatever, it's kind of like that. So they have to like fight the incoming student government, who like the son is or the president is the son of the leader or the board of regents. Anyway, it's a kind of nerds versus jocks kind of type of story. And but it's very like I said, this is not quite like anything I've done before. There's no murder in it. Um, I know. But it's very funny, which I love, because that's something I absolutely love to draw is humor. And it's very actually pretty heartwarming because it's also about like found family, like the whole college experience. Like, for me, like college was like it was nice because it was kind of like a clean slate. Like I didn't have the baggage, people knew me like in high school or any kind of preconceived notions about me or whatever. And so like the friends I made in college, like I still talk to them, not all of them, but most of them. And just that kind of camaraderie that we all felt like, especially in my department where I was in school, like just you're all in it together, you're all young, and you have like this kind of optimism, youthful optimism that, kind of slowly gets whittled away as you age. But yeah, it's a really, really fun book, and I really hope people will check it out. And yeah, it was a joy to do.
I'm excited for this. Like, how did this come about? Were you like, was this something that you co-created or were you approached?
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
happened?
So, Free Comic Book Day in Zeus Comics long time ago, 2009, in Dallas, Texas. The two writers of this book, Lila Sturgis and Dave Justice, they're from Austin. They came up for that Free Comic Book Day, and we just were seated next to each other, and we just hung out all day, and we just hit it off. And we talked for years about doing something, and I did a fill-in for a book that they did for Devil's Due that lost funding, so it's like it's just done with no way to be released. And then we did a pitch for like a horror book that's been passed around and didn't really uh, catch on anywhere. But then um, Dave came to me with this, and he was like, "We've got this story. We think you'd be perfect for it, but it takes place in a school. Do you want to read it?" And I was hesitant because, I mean, there's always as a comic creator, you do worry about being typecast. And I was like, I had drawn Morning Glories that place in a school, and Archie, which is high school kids and everything. So I was like, well, let me read it, and it was so funny. I said, of course, I want to draw this, and so we sent the initial pitch around, and it was originally like a more mature reader's book with a lot of dick and fart jokes. Uh, so our editor, Lauren Heithusen, read this. She's like, I think this is, if you'll take those out, this is actually a young adult story. And so we're like, oh, okay, we hadn't thought of it like that. And but they wanted to do the book. So I think that was like 20, I want to say it was 2023. And Dave and Lila came up to my house and they spent the weekend with me, and we fleshed out the story. Like I've never done this in any book I've ever worked on. Every book I've worked on, like collaboration, has been through email, occasionally on Zoom or Skype or whatever with the other team. But they drove up and they spent the weekend here, and like we got to hash out they got to kind of finish the outline of the story. We worked on characters together. I was like sitting there sketching them out as they were like, well, what if we had a character that was like this? And I was like, okay, how about this? And I drew it, and that kind of led them down certain paths, how to write it. And so it really was like the most fulfilling collaboration I've ever had creatively in comics.
It's so cool. That makes me think of I don't remember, it was an interview with either, I think it was either Louis Simonson or Chris Claremont. They talked about the Titans X-Men crossover
Hmm.
that they literally came up with in the kitchen of Walter Simonson and Louis Simonson.
Oh
And it's
yeah,
like the three of them basically wrote out the entire crossover right there, which is why it's interesting because you have Walter Simonson who was never like he was an X Factor guy and probably
yeah.
a Thor guy, but never really a big X-Men guy.
Right.
And it's like, wait, why is Walter Simonson drawing a Teen Titans and can he draw more? Um, but yeah, I mean, just hearing the idea of like, yeah, they just came to my house. We made a comic book, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that is so cool because you don't really see that anymore, especially post COVID.
Yeah, I know. And I think that was also part of what made it so great is because, post COVID, like I definitely value experiences a lot more like just tangentially that like I like to go to concerts a lot. I didn't go to concerts a lot before COVID, but like now I'm like I may never see this person again because I was in lockdown for so long and we didn't know what was going to happen. So I'll go to this concert and it's great. But like yeah, it's definitely kind of COVID's kind of changed my perspective on things and I'm like I want to work on stuff that I'm very passionate about and that I'm just super energized about it. And this was one I was like, I really like this, and I really like Dave and Lila. We have such a great chemistry, and I would work with them forever if I could. And we've got a couple irons in the fire for different other ideas, and we all were just at Emerald City in Seattle last month, and they came. My wife and I, we got this Airbnb, and they came and spent like one of the nights, and we just went through some more ideas, and we did the same thing, but kind of like a more truncated collaboration thing, and then. It's just great. I love working with them like that. And not every collaborator, I mean, a lot of collaborators, they're all scattered, different states, different countries. It's not possible to collaborate like that. But it's a different energy, especially if like you're all you have good chemistry creatively to be in the same room to develop something.
So with that, is there anything as we're kind of bringing everything to a close? Is there anything else that you want to touch on? Anything just in general? Something you're working
Um,
on, general geekery.
yeah.
What's going on with you?
So they just announced I'm doing something with the new Ignition Press with from Jamie Rich, Jeremy Hahn, and Philip Sableeks, their new imprint. I think our first kind of story because they're doing like these little preview stories for the new books that they're launching. I'm working with Jim McCann who I've loved for so long. His stuff from the last Apperman and the Mind the Gap, which he worked with Rodine from Morning Glories. Um, I'm finally getting to work with him, and we're working on this story. I'm very excited about it. I've got a Star Trek thing coming out, I think, later this year, and another book with Mad Cave that I think they haven't announced yet, but that's for 2026. So, yeah.
I'm sorry when you mentioned Rich. The thing that got me into indie comics when I was younger, when I was in high school, was Oni Press.
Uh-huh.
Especially when they're like at their like from like I'm not saying and I'm not decrying anything they do now, but for me, like the early 2000s, Oni Press was like their peak because
Yeah.
it's like everyone knows about Kevin Smith, but the fact that
hmm
like Kevin Smith started basically kicked off with him, Brian Michael Bendis, Greg
hmm
Rucka, all these people were Judd Winnick, and it's
Yeah.
like holy hell! Like you go back and read that and like look over some of the stuff they were doing, and
Yeah.
my brain immediately went back to that as soon as you mentioned Devious Rich.
Oh yeah. I have his book that he did with Joelle Jones, and that's like one of my favorite comics, The 12 Reasons Why I Love Her. And I saw him at the party where they were announcing Ignition in New York last year. And like I was like, when are you gonna write more of that? And he just kind of laughed at me. But yeah, I love that early Oni Press stuff. Like that's also like my wheelhouse. That's that kind of stuff. I would love to do a book kind of in that style that they used to publish.
I remember um, first. I feel like this is a story for anyone who first met Jim Mahfood outside of a convention. But when I
hmm
first met Jim Mahfood, we were at a live show and we were drinking, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna buy him a beer. And I bought Jim Mahfood a beer, and we're sitting there talking, and I was like, I knew he was gonna be doing live art, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna bring my comics to the bar. I don't give a shit. Um, and he signed. I can't remember the other two that he signed, but I think the first one was like one of his first stupid comics collections that he did
Oh wow.
with Oni. And he just wrote this is really old. Like he signed it, this is old shit. And he just wrote that on the book. I'm like, this is
Wow.
amazing.
That's hilarious.
I think if you haven't drank with Jim Muffin, then you're doing something wrong.
Well, that actually reminds me of like another thing. Like if you're ever you see like because a lot of Comic Cons like Heroes Con, all these the big thing is Bar Con, you really want to like compliment a career is buy him a drink.
Yep.
That goes a long way.
So what's your go-to drink, Joe?
I like bourbon neat, but yeah, I used to be like, just a beer guy, but like I kept gaining too much weight, so I had to cut the beer out. I have a friend who lives here who's like a huge bourbon nerd, and he's got like an entire closet with bottles that he's collected, and so he kind of got me into it. But I'm not a collector or anything, but yeah, and that's another thing that I bonded with the Ignition Press people, Philip Sablik and Jeremy Hahn, was because they're big into bourbon as well. So yeah, that's my go-to drink.
See, I'm not a big drinker
Nice.
anymore, but if someone's like, "Hey, I'll buy you a Guinness," I'm like, "All right, cool.
Yeah,
Let's sit down and talk about stuff."
yeah. I mean, a free drink's a free drink.
What about you,
Yeah.
Michael?
Oh, I'm a pansy. I'll just have like a Mike's Hard or something like that.
Boo!
I've got like a couple of coworkers who are like way like more well, I don't want to say like there's no like nice way to say like they're more experienced with drinking, but
Yeah,
like when I
they're the heavy
mention that
drinkers.
they bring up and they're just like, "Oh, I drink this, I drink that." And I'm like, "Oh,
No, in the rare
Mike's
moments I
Hard."
drink, it's either weirdly enough cider or Guinness. Like, there's no in between. So it's
Yeah,
either like
yes,
borderline non-alcoholic and
yeah,
dark enough to where you don't want to drink more than one because you'll knock yourself out.
right.
But I have been on a few cruises with like drinking packages, and when I do have that, I just gotta have like a pina colada.
Nice. Yeah,
Just
those are fun.
hook me up with an IV of pina colada when I'm on a cruise, basically.
I
That's
think that's a bad idea because you'll die. Just putting that out there.
I haven't died yet.
There you go. If you haven't died yet, you should be fine. That should be a rule. That's a good post-COVID rule.
Yeah,
It really is. I got a couple questions, Joe. Just kind
sure.
of boilerplate, but do you have like a dream like book to work on?
Yeah, well, the X-Men are like my like dream property. Like those characters. That's what I grew up is the biggest fan of. Like the first uh series that I was a big fan of was Fantastic Four, but very quickly discovered the X-Men, and X-Men ever since was just like that's my favorite franchise of all time. And Nightcrawler in particular, he's my favorite comic book character. I would love to do just a one-shot comic of Nightcrawler or whatever. That'd be fine with me. I don't think I could be pulling, a John Byrne or Mark Silvestri or whatever and do an X-Men run. I'm too old for that at this point. But yeah, that's the one property I'd love to like just draw something in is the X-Men.
Well, you did say before, like you were worried about getting typecast as somebody who
Yeah,
does nothing but like school books, but
right.
it takes place in a school.
Well, there's also
Michael, X-Men's
different
different.
kind
Shut
of
up.
well, there's
What's
different
that?
parts of the franchise too. There's because my favorite X book of all time is Excalibur. And that's the British X-Men where they lived in a lighthouse and they operated off like the coast of England. And it was bizarre and weird and humorous and all the stuff I love to draw. That is actually my dream. If I wanted to narrow it down to a single book, that would be the one that I would want to draw is Excalibur. Like, if it was like they did those stories that are set in the classic continuity or whatever, those ones that are sort of like set between stories or whatever. Like that would be great. But yeah, I mean, at some point, you accept your typecasting and you just roll with it.
Yeah, make it work
I'm
for you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say real quick about Excalibur. Excalibur, like I'd only ever read issues of the Claremont run, and I had issues of the Davis run, but I never actually sat down and read them.
Hmm.
When they released the omnibuses, I'm reading them, and I'm like, normally when Claremont has a book and they have a creator who immediately follows them, it's a good run, but it's hard to compare it. And
Right.
that was the one of the few times where I'm like, Alan Davis seems to have a better voice for these characters than Chris does.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's weird like that. I feel the same way. I feel like Davis, like, for a longest time, I think that's why he was one of my like artistic influences, because like his storytelling and his acting and his characters was like I felt like there were hardly anybody that could like be at his level, and it's very evident in Excalibur. And then when he wrote it, not only were the characters drawn like with very great storytelling and performance, like but like their voices felt like correct too. And it didn't there wasn't a disparity, in the switching of the writers in that regard.
My only problem with those eras, the Claremont to Davis era, is about when they had a fill-in artist.
Oh yeah,
They always seem to have trouble getting a fill-in artist that fit.
yeah,
Like I mean, the fact that you had Ron Lim do
hmm
fill-in art during the Claremont run and it didn't work and it looked odd. And I'm
yeah,
like, this is Ron Lim. This is the guy who did worked on Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity everything. And
yeah,
somehow it just clashed.
yeah.
And
There's some
it's
stuff there, like in the cross time caper stuff. I'm like, ooh, that art doesn't fit with this. It's not that it's bad. I mean, there's one artist, I think it's Chris Wozniak. I like his stuff, but I was just like, I don't know if this was suited for this book. But
we have Joe Eisma, who I love. When I was t when I came across the Excalibur book, and I'm like, it's gonna feel weird. And then I read it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is actually fits really well. And then you
mhm.
realize that the man was 15, and it's like, I'm not saying there's some spite there when you find
Yeah,
out that the guy was 15 when he wrote this comic book.
I
But
know.
it's like, you motherfucker,
Yes.
what was he? I think he was like what 23 when he stopped doing X-Men and went to Battle Chasers, which
Yeah,
is
yeah. No, he was so
insane.
young. And like, yeah, and then I mean, yeah, that was it was so like envious of that to be like that talented and that skilled at that point, and to like, when he first started, like I think the first few Excalibur fill-ins, I thought he was an Art Adams clone.
He admitted it.
Yeah. And then like by the time you get to Age of Apocalypse, like he leveled up, and I'm like, this is like amazing. This is mind-blowing stuff.
I have mentioned this because I never wanted to stir up shit on social media. I got
Never.
yelled at by what is it? Who's the guy who runs the Glass House Graphics or Glass House Comics? The David something or other. You know, the ones who basically kicked off Roger Cruz and Fabiano Laguna and all
Oh
the
yeah.
other artists
Look
whose whole
this
thing was
up.
just swiping from other artists. I got yelled at by him the other day, and I'm like, I don't know if this is because I basically just called I basically called the company a swipe factory, and like he was going off on a rant about the comic industry now, and I'm like, there's something wrong here, man, but okay. And I got yelled at by him. And I tried to play nice afterwards, but I'm like, oof, I've not gotten ire from that like that from the person in the creative field in a long time. I mean, it's
Oh.
really hard to call them that particular company a creative field, so I'm just going to push that. Um, but I'm like, I don't know how I should feel about this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough
Because the
one.
company that created Roger Cruz,
Yeah.
although I will say this, Roger Cruz as an artist, once he really developed his own style, damn, just
Yeah.
like that X-Men First Class series is still like one of the peak for
Yeah.
comic art, and I'm like, oh, the Spider Girl Nirvana, which is
Yeah.
like one of the best looking comics ever, and
Oh
unfortunately,
my
most
God.
people know her because of Madam Web.
Yeah. Right?
I'm
Yeah,
like,
like
ugh.
Classic.
Cruz's X-Men First Class stuff. I used to just pore over those pages. I was like, I love his clean lines. Like I still sometimes will go look online to see if I can find his pages, his line art, because I love that really fine line stuff,
Yeah.
and it's gorgeous stuff.
But I don't know if I should feel honored or be upset that I got yelled at by the guy who created Glass House about
Badge of
the
honor.
comic industry.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, that's always, and
Yeah.
that's that aside for the day. Sorry,
I'm,
because I
I'm
thought we mentioned Excalibur and it led to Joe Mad, and my brain went to
Yeah.
Roger Cruz because of that infamous panel where
Cruz
Joe
swipes
Mad here
again.
exactly. Because imagine, Michael, I want to ask you this: imagine how gratuitously obvious an artist swiping your work has to be for the artist to put Cruz swipes again in the in the comic book published by the same company from the same series.
I've seen some pretty bad instances of swipes over the years, but I'm unfamiliar with that one. Do you want to pull that one up?
Yeah, yeah. Let's do this real quick.
There
After
was
this one. After this, I do want to try to get everything. get everything wrapped up, but I'm
Yeah,
definitely
sure.
going to show those because
Yeah, there was
goddamn.
when I was first starting out, there was another artist that I knew, and we both were doing sample scripts for Marvel, and I was doing a Marvel Adventures Spider-Man. I think he was doing Ultimate Spider-Man. Anyway, I got some really nice feedback on mine, and he got some less positive feedback on his, and so a couple of and we kind of he wanted to see mine. I was like, okay, you can check it out. Anyway, weeks go by. He does the same exact script that I did and he literally swiped my sample pages. I was like, you're swiping sample pages?
Wow.
It was the most bizarre thing. I'm like, I've never seen anybody do that. And I've had my Morning Glories pages swiped by Tumblr artists, and I didn't know how to feel about that. It was really
So,
weird.
so
Oh,
Michael, are you
Ian,
seeing this?
yeah, that's pretty.
Oh, there you go. Cruise swipes again.
There it is. Cruz swipes again.
But
Damn.
here's the thing: when we talk about X-Men First Class, and when Roger Cruz actually started developing his own style,
Yeah,
it looks
beautiful.
really good.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's what creativity looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once again,
Hmm.
although oddly enough, this does kind of remind me of other artists, but you know what? Neither here
A
nor
little
there.
bit.
No, but yeah.
One last thing, Joe, is that a
Hmm.
Prometheus poster behind
It
you?
Yes,
is.
that is.
Nice.
I unashamedly love that movie. I know it gets a lot of trash
It's
talk, but
we
yeah.
I think me and Ian both agree that it's pretty underrated.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I saw it opening night in the theater in 3D.
Oh,
I think a
nice.
midnight showing, and it was so great. The 3D was amazing. And my friends and I that went to see it, we spent like 30, 45 minutes in the parking lot afterwards talking about it. And it was like so late. And we were all so tired, but like,
Mhm.
wait, what about this? So
Yeah.
it was just one of those movies that just really made a mark on me.
Yeah,
Really enjoy that movie.
we have some.
How do you feel about Covenant?
Boy, I mourn the movie that could have been. That
You
I
mean the
mourn
movie that happened
Prometheus
between those
2.
two that would just seem to not exist?
What?
Yeah.
Even the
Yeah.
fact that it just felt like there was a movie between those two that just
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Yeah, that's what yeah, exactly. That's what I feel. I'm like, that's the movie I wanted. I mean, there's some aspects of Covenant that I like.
Yeah.
I really feel like Ridley Scott caved to the studio and didn't make the movie he really wanted to make, and I felt it was compromised, and that's why I like that one less. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
dislike it. I'll still watch it over Alien Resurrection or whatever, but um, I would much rather have seen like Prometheus 2, honestly.
Definitely.
You mean you don't love the scene where they slip in their own blood, slip in the blood with the shotgun, and you could totally just insert the sound yakety sax and it would actually work. It's like dun, 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 dun,
Has
dun, dun,
somebody
dun,
done that?
dun.
Is that like on
Oh,
YouTube?
we found
That's
this and we
that's
actually put
gotta
this
be a
on the show.
thing.
I gotta ask when we gotta throw out a teaser for an upcoming episode. Um, Joe, if you have the time, we are going to be doing an Alien retrospective
Oh, I would
for
love to.
LV 426 if you want to join us.
Okay. Yeah, just remind me. Yeah, because that sounds fun because I love that's probably Alien is probably my favorite film of all time. And I do love the franchise and I mean I have opinions about it. So yeah.
Yeah,
Good deal.
we had a yeah, as you know, I just hate throwing people under the bus. Um, we had a former co-host on the show who was really into the idea of us recording on Discord, even though Discord is really not a podcast form made for podcast recordings normally.
Hmm.
And he didn't really know how to record on Discord. And we had an entire Alien retrospective that just went bye-bye
Oh no.
because he didn't know how to record on Discord. But he's not a part of Circuit 42 anymore, so there you go.
All
For various reasons. Um, so yeah,
right.
I don't mind re-recording that.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm excited for that. I loved having you back on the show. way too long. It's been the since the days of Skype.
Yeah, I know.
Isn't
And
Skype like dead or
it is
dying?
dead.
It's dead officially, right?
I mean, I'd
Yeah.
said that about Minecraft, but then apparently that movie's making like $400 million in like a week. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I guess somebody somewhere out there wants the old Jack Black action figure. So
Yeah.
you got that going for them, so that's nice. But with that, as we kind of bring everything to a close, where can we find you in this wacky, crazy world out there, both in your publishing work and on this place that's totally non-toxic, especially recent, especially this last year, social media. We're
Well, you
talking
can,
about Trump.
right.
Sorry, that just came out. I apologize.
All right. You can find student government and find bookstores everywhere. I definitely recommend getting it from like your local comic shop or local bookstore, um, as opposed to like lining the pockets of billionaires who don't have your best interests in heart. Um, or wherever you like to get your books. And I'm on the socials, mostly on Blue Sky and Instagram, and a little bit of Facebook at Supajoe, Supajoe. I try to avoid the dark place as much as possible, the Elon place. But yeah, that's about where I'm at these days.
Right now, for Circuit 42, we can find us at this point. We just don't know where to put ourselves because it's
It's hard.
it's difficult.
Yeah.
Because and unfortunately, we are back on some of the social media, but we've chosen to permanently not be on Twitter because we just couldn't stand the Musk of it all. But
Mm,
that Musk has just continued to smell worse and worse every year. But
agreed.
you can find us on, unfortunately, Zuckerberg's Instagram and Facebook. You can find us occasionally posting on Blue Sky and mostly around the holidays posting on TikTok. You can listen to us, of course, on iTunes. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can listen to us on wherever popular podcasts play. That's pretty much how it is. For me, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, probably, if you really want to. And Michael, what about you?
You can find me on Instagram at Four Ducks Pilot a Man Suit. Blue Sky, you can find me at Four Ducks in a Man Suit. And you sure as shit cannot find me on Truth Social.
Thank
There you
goodness.
go. And of course, you can listen to all three of us on a future episode of Circuit 42 as we talk about the Alien franchise, the work of directors like Ridley Scott, James Cameron, Dave Fincher, and of course, see if we can't get Joe to defend Exodus, the
Yeah, I don't
whitest
know.
Egyptian movie ever made.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's certainly a movie.
That is true.
Technically a movie,
That
yes.
is true. That is
It's the
certainly
most
a
movie that
film.
ever moved. But yeah, thank you again for coming on the show. This has been a blast. Michael, we did not get your social medias.
Yeah,
Where can
Instagram at Four Ducks Pilot a Man Suit and Blue Sky at Four Ducks in a Man Suit.
There you go. So with that, everyone have a great night. Thank you once again for coming on. And go read comics. Damn, God damn it. They're good for you.